Welcome to A Matter of Perspective. I'm Judge Derwin Webb, coming to you from the Fraser History Museum today. We have our guest today, my man, Mr. Vince Tyra. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tyra, you are actually the athletic director at the University of Louisville. Now, let's just say this. People go to school to be athletic directors. People go to school for a lot of different things. You took a different way of getting to the university. Tell us your story, how you became the athletic director at the university.
Well, it's an interesting one, obviously, and not the normal course. But having been in business, I was in the senior leadership for a good while, most of my career, and at CEO level, and then went into private equity, where I had the opportunity to acquire some businesses inside of that company. And I was generally chairman of the board of 3 to 5 of those companies that we would own at any one time. So, you learn both sides of the table. You learn how to be the operator and then help the operator. And I think that there's a fine balance between, being helpful without being intrusive when you're a chairman. And then, that availed me the opportunity to be on the University of Louisville Foundation Board, where I was on that for 7 months before things went a little awry in the university. And I was asked to step in for a short while, which has turned into a longer while.
Now, you were a former student athlete at that university in Lexington.
Yep.
Now, tell me this. Being an athletic director now, being a former student athlete, how is your perspective being in leadership now, knowing that you were a former student athlete at one time?
Well, I think it's made the transition from business to the athletic director position, much easier, frankly. This being a student athlete, you gain your perspective, you go through a lot of experiences. Some of it's gotten a lot better than when we were in school,
right.
Those experiences. But you still, the fundamentals are still the same. You got to get to class, make your grades, the time management and so forth, teammates, all the issues that go on, the politics in sports, however you want to put it. The student athletes are dealing with a lot of the same things that we dealt with when we played.
Right. Now, you took over from an athletic director who was very popular in the community. And a lot of that popularity came along with sponsorships and people that donated to the university. But when that athletic director left, some of those sponsorships left as well. What have you done to try and get people more involved with the university again, or gain that respect back to the university since you've taken over?
I think one of it is just letting people know the course we were charting and what we're going to do with the athletic department. We talked a lot about the culture and, ethics and, frankly, clean the place up of difficult situations and in some cases people. And, so I was just honest to the situation, particularly since I didn't know how long I was going to be in there, but I was clear on what we were going to attack when the time I was going to be there. And I think that story resonated with a lot of great companies in this community. So, that year that I stepped in, that first year of through 2018, I'll say into 2018, first fiscal year, donations were down, and I wasn't asking for donations. I was just out telling people what we were trying to accomplish.
Right.
And into the next fiscal year 19, we set a record with fundraising, and we've since continued to do extremely well. With UPS, $5 million, and we had Planet Fitness for another $3 million. We had Kentucky Farm Bureau for another $2.5 million, L&N Credit for $2 million. And they just started piling up, where very quickly we had put together another $17.5 million, and it's grown since. We just announced $3.5 million with the Galt House, and we've got another $3 million donation that we'll announce at the appropriate time.
Right. Well, you take over, and you have to make some decisions pretty quickly. One of those decisions was replacing a coach and hiring a new coach. Obviously, you hired Coach Mack to run the basketball team. What went into that thought process, and how did you come to the conclusion of him being the basketball coach at the university?
Yeah, I think fit had a lot to do with all the coaches I've had the opportunity to bring to the university. That they fit what I was out there preaching, about the kind of culture and the type of people we want. They were going to take care of the kids. They were, had the right attitude about it. I think I preach gratitude over entitlement, and I was looking for people who had very similar characteristics. Coach Mack has that. He had been a championship in my mind, a championship level coach, had been National Coach of the Year, and 2 years before he joined us, and he was Big East Coach of the Year with Jay Wright the year before when we recruited him to come here. So he was obviously recognized in the industry as a top coach, if not one of, certainly the top coach, by the recognition that he received. Did a great job with Xavier. Had the #1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and I just felt like he represented the teeth and the bird, is what I say. He's a gritty, tough person, competitor as a player. Fought through adversity. He carries that over into his coaching style, but he's a lover in the sense that he really does love on the players. He has great rapport with them. We had found that out, that player-coach meant a lot to us, and I felt like he was going to represent the tradition and legacy that we have here well and carry it on and get us back in that national championship battle.
Right. So you hit a home run with him, and then you step up to the plate again and hit another home run with Coach Satterfield.
Yeah.
A lot of people were thinking about another coach from the area. What went into the process of you hiring him?
Again, I think fit was important. Really you got to want to be here.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. If not, it's going to be a short-term relationship, and you're going to look for another paycheck. And, the other coach, Jeff Brom, and I are friends and close and got a chance to chat. But, he was in an interesting situation, been there a year. I think he did feel some commitment to that. And when you start going down that path, before we even talk economics, if you don't feel somebody really wants it and going to be here, I think you got to be thinking about the other candidates as we were. And I was talking to Scott, frankly, at the same time as I was Jeff. Actually, on the drive up to West Lafayette, I was talking to Scott, and we had a great rapport going. And I could tell he had, again, very good leadership characteristics. He built rapport in the locker room. He built the leadership within the players, where it was a player. Accountability was developed. Some of the things that I felt we were lacking, he had in his program, and certainly envious of what he's been able to do and attracting good coaches and keeping them. Even at App State, when he took over and they moved from FCS to FBS, he took them out of the cellar, and the year we got him, they were 26th in the nation at App State. So outside the Power 5, doing that well, development of players, quality person and family, felt like he was really going to fit well here.
Okay, let's just be honest. We talked before you actually got on camera about the last 24 hours, and things have been a little bit crazy for you in the university. Talk about the last 24 hours. It seems like the ACC is kind of blown up. There's only one division. Schedules are crazy now. Talk about what went into this whole process the last 20. I'm sure it's lasted longer than 24 hours, but what's been going on?
Well, there's been a lot, but it all came to a head in the last 24 hours. To your point, a lot of planning, a lot of discussion, but I don't think many people thought that the ACC was going to come out with a football schedule that was one division, 15 teams, and one of them happens to be Notre Dame.
Right.
And how to get them on board and bring their NBC TV contract, which has a lot of value. That part of it is pretty interesting. I think the other part that will get missed is how much work was done on the Olympic sports and what we're able to do to accomplish, kind of getting them into a safe zone. Those are sports that, they're traveling by commercial plane, not charter planes, so the risk for their travel goes up. And we talked about how to mitigate the risk, and we did that, moving those sports from 91 flights down to 25. But I guess what I would say is a lot of tension in the air, a lot of great ideas, good challenges, but a great outcome. Between all the ADs, we've got some new ADs in the conference. I'm probably up in the middle of the list now, even in my third year, which seems funny, but the talent is really, it's really great, great experience, great people in the room, and it was about as impressive I've seen leaders come together with our commissioner and the team in the ACC office to get to where we are.
I know we talk about the major sports, football, basketball, a lot, especially as regarding COVID-19. But since the epidemic and the pandemic has really hit this part of the country, can you talk to us about what being in your position has done for you in the university, and what should we expect going forward with this pandemic in our midst?
Well, then that's the thing is we don't see the end, right? I mean, we can see we're in the process. I can't even tell you if we're in the middle of it. And that's what I've told our coaches and student athletes that, when some say, well, I might want to take this year off a red shirt, I'll just come back next year. I don't know what next year is. I can't guarantee them we're going to be free and clear next year. We might be in the same mess. I'm hopeful we're not. And I think there's progress there, but it makes you reflect on, obviously you hear the term essential. What's essential to your department? What's essential to the student athlete? And it's a reminder that we're here for the student athlete experience. So when you start thinking about where you spend money and where you do things, if it's not wrapped around that student athlete experience, we got to reconsider it.
Right.
And so we've canceled a lot of professional development things. We've certainly taken the kickoff luncheons and tip-off lunches, made those virtual to save money. There's been a number of things we've had to do to just focus on how we can keep them healthy and get them into competition.
I was going to say, obviously, it has affected your bottom line. How has it affected everything for you?
Yeah, well, we've had to make some tough decisions for sure. Right away, we were projecting to go in with a budget of an operating budget of $109 million, and all of a sudden we're looking at 95, and I can see the 95 eroding as we speak. So we made some decisions. We cut about $15 million out of our budget to get there. We have less staff. We've had to furlough some staff that'll be going forward for an undetermined amount of time. We've had to cut a lot of discretionary spend in a variety of areas to be prepared. And I think one of the things we didn't expect to save on was recruiting, because the NCAA's extended the dead period. There's no recruiting going on with any travel. So each month that clicks by, there's a fair amount of savings in our recruiting budget that are going to help us, and we're going to need it, because for all the additional testing and all the different additional costs related to COVID, we're going to need every dollar we can, and there'll still be more that we're going to have to look at.
Well, let's talk about the testing right now. I did have a question from someone that wanted to know a little bit about testing. I believe that Lawrence Webb, actually my son sent this in. How are you testing your athletes, and is there a contingency plan for an outbreak? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a great question. We haven't seen a full outbreak, but we do the PCR testing up through the nasal cannula, and that's the most, highest efficacy that we have in the test. So we're fortunate to be attached to U of L Health, where we have access to great test and turnaround time on test. So if there was someone who tested positive, we're not waiting days and longer. While I know we have the benefit of that to mitigate any outbreak. But if someone does test positive, we do right away the contact tracing and try to figure out where they've been, who they've been around, and check on those people and do some additional testing, particularly if they're other student athletes, to mitigate any kind of outbreak. But we do quarantine them, we take care of them, we feed them. We got to get them food, whether go to Kroger's and shop for them. The NCAA is really lenient right now when it comes to how do you take care of a student athlete. It's really a best judgment policy right now. I don't think they're really interested in knowing all the details of that, but we're taking care of them as best we can to mitigate it. The thing now is, we said today for the first time we shared test results. We've done about 700 tests, and we've had 13 student athletes and 3 staff that have tested positive. Those are our numbers. Of that, there's only been a handful that actually showed symptoms. The others were asymptomatic. And so the way it works now is the CDC is already improving their guidelines, where if you're asymptomatic, your quarantine a shorter period of time. You can get back into practice for us. And then if you do test positive and you get through your quarantine, you don't have to be tested again for 90 days. So we're doing weekly tests, like we do weekly tests for football and the other sports that we'll be competing in. If they've already tested positive, they've done their quarantine, they're back out, we won't test them again for a few months. And for some of the fall sports, that is the season. So you would like to believe you're not going to have a big outbreak. If you do, we'll pause. We'll shut down. We've paused 2 sports in the summer, but only because we had time on our side, and we were out of abundance of safety and care. We just said, well, let's hold up. Basketball was one of them. We had a couple tests, but we said, let's just sit tight. If that were to happen again in the season, and that we had an athlete test, the way it turned out, we would have quarantined that individual, but the team would have kept on. They would have played without him. We had no other positive test, and later didn't either. So they would have kept on playing. If we'd have had half the team or more, or we had trouble fielding a starting lineup, then the league is preparing for those contingencies as well, as to postpone the game, either cancel the game, either call it a no competition. We're going to run into that. I don't see how we're not going to run into it in one of these sports once we get going.
Well, what do you feel is the biggest challenge you have as an athletic director during this time?
Educating the student athletes not to go out in these public gatherings and do all the things. Rutgers, this morning you wake up, 15 players on the football team tested positive from being in a party. They do the contact tracing. Clemson, the schools that we've seen double-digit positives are all being directed back to frankly a bar or a party. So all we can do is educate them. And as they see our state numbers come out, there's only been one death under the age of 30 in the state. So that gives them a lot of courage that I don't have at 54 to do the things that they're doing. So I think that's the hardest part, is educate them that they could impact their coach, they could impact someone else on the staff in the athletic department, and to be safe, take care of themselves.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. Talk a little bit about the NCAA. There's new legislation, new regulations out where students can actually use their likeness now and make money off of it. What do you think about that new rule, and do you think it's good or bad?
I think it's good. I think it has worries in me for sure.
And I was going to ask you, how do you monitor something like that?
Yeah, because it's developing right now, and I am on the ACC Name, Image, and Likeness Subcommittee. There's 4 of us shaping the legislation to give to the NCAA, but really give to Congress, to be honest. I mean, in parallel, we're working with Congress more than we are as much as we are the NCAA on that. I think you got to have guardrails on it, but me personally, I'm for it. I think there's ways to do it. I'm not excited about them being able to use sponsors that we have or competitors as sponsors, and I'll get right to the point. I don't want them signing up with Adidas or signing up with Nike. I just think we've seen trouble there as a university
Right.
and as college sports. I think those are the sponsors that worry me. If they're going to sign up with Tom Drexler Plumbing or something in town, or whatever it might be, that's it's not in alignment with the university, then have at it. You want to be the spokesmodel. I think the other thing is, the biggest debate, Derwin, is whether they can use our marks, whether they can use the L or the cardinal bird and go out and put on their gear and say I'm using those marks and licenses are very valuable. And when we sign these contracts with the farm bureaus and L&N Credit and UPS, they don't care I'm not saying they don't totally care, but they really don't care who we're recruiting and who's going to be on the starting lineup. They're about aligning with the university, aligning with the athletic department. Their sponsorship agreement is with us and not with the individual athletes. So I think that's one of the things it's a fine line as to where can they go. Can they make money through social media? Sure. Can they do things, model for things? Yes.
Is there going to be a cap on it at all, or something like that?
No cap. No, I think if you get into a cap, then you're getting into some other antitrust. I think you're probably getting into some labor laws that you don't want to get into. If you get into, then you're talking about unionization. You start putting caps on. So I'm okay. If somebody's valued at, they can make $400,000 a year and pull in next to me in their Mercedes as a student athlete. I don't think it's too far-fetched to believe that could happen.
Right.
But I think we got to figure out what the right guardrails on to protect them, because even though my father was a professional athlete and street smart, at 18, when I thought about going pro out of high school in baseball instead of going to college, the idea of signing up with someone back then would have been a joke. I mean, I wouldn't have been educated enough in my family to even understand it, how to pick an agent, how they're trustworthy. I mean, I wouldn't have been in a position to do that. I don't know how many of our athletes would be today. So they're going to need some help.
Speaking of that, talk about a little bit about you talked about Adidas and Nike. Notice of allegations are out. And I know that the university has applied for an extension. Can you talk a little bit about what the defense could possibly be, and where are we looking? What are we looking at in the future for the University of Louisville and the basketball team?
Yeah, so we were due August 2nd to have our notice of allegation response, and we did request a 45-day extension on that. That's pretty commonplace. The way these cases go, and for us, you can see. I think we've been pretty strong that some of the things that came out of the FBI didn't have quite the facts that I think the NCAA's presented, and those are the ones that we're talking about, challenges, which I can't speak to specifically here for obvious reasons, but I think we see where we have some real issues with the overriding charges, and there's some areas where we got to learn more from what they have that we haven't seen, and if there's facts, then I think we got to own them. I don't think there's anything different than that. I don't know how you wiggle around that, but if there's things we have issues with, then we gotta challenge those. That's just the spirit of me is I want to make sure that I'm 100% clear that we factually did something wrong before we give.
Right.
And I think that's why you're hearing us being probably a little more aggressive. Got more gunpowder with support this time. You've heard about Mike Glazer joining us. We've got other counsel outside of that that has been used in the past. Neil Catal, who's been was a litigator of the year, which you can appreciate.
Yes.
Is a very bright guy, and so we're in a good spot on what we're trying to do, and I think there's real value to our fans and to our basketball program to make sure that whatever does come out of it, we're as comfortable as the NCAA this time.
Let me say this. I've seen you out in the community. I know what you've done as far as the university is concerned. I know we've had discussions in the past about what your vision is for the basketball team. But one thing I do know is that you're committed to every sport. How do you balance being the athletic director that has to be there for every sport, every athlete, every student athlete, and your personal life as well? Or do you even have one at this point? So how do you balance all the things you're trying to do?
I'm fortunate, with Lori, my wife, I mean, she appreciates, and it's a lifestyle job. If you don't love sports, this is a terrible job because it'll eat you up having to go to all these events and go to all these games. And, I do a lot of speaking engagements on behalf of the university, not just athletics, but the university and our community. But Lori's great at it. I mean, she loves to attend the game. She's a huge cheerleader. She reminds me a lot of my mom when she's screaming at games and getting all excited. So that part of it's fun. It's the way I raised my kids, going to U of L games. It's the way I was raised. So if our family wasn't so engaged and emotional about what's happening at Louisville and what's happening in our community, this wouldn't be much fun. But it doesn't. I don't feel it's taxing or taken away when I go to a soccer game or sit in a steamy natatorium and watch a 1,000 breaststroke, heat or something. So, no, it's just part of it. You got to love it.
Well, I'll tell you this. Talk to me about what it's like to be an athletic director. A lot of people don't know this, but I used to be assistant AD at U of L a long time ago. But things have changed, and I know you and I talked about things that have changed now. It's not exactly just going to watch a game, and that's about it. What's a typical day like for you?
Yeah, well, it has changed. I mean, I think that when I accepted this position, Derwin, I did my own diligence to see, is this something I should really do? 87% of Division I ADs at that time were from fundraising. They came up through fundraising. There was another chunk that came through compliance. And then there was a new run of, which you can appreciate, people called lawyers and business people, and that number has grown. So what you're seeing now is you are seeing more lawyers and business people come into this position, and I think it's because of the complexity that athletics is today. It's not a $20 million budget at U of L anymore. It's a $120 million budget now, and it's incredibly complex with what we're doing in terms of facilities, sponsorships, competing and recruiting. The legal agreements on everything from a game contract looks dramatically different. A head coaching contract is way different. Even from the time I got here, we've torn up a lot of the things that were there. There were amendments and memorandum of understanding, and I'm not knocking it. That's just the way the business was run then. It evolves. Everything does. But it's had to change to mitigate. And as I say, one of the very first things I said to the management team is, I'm going to do a risk management assessment of this athletic department to determine where the places we should go first to get some things in order. And they didn't have any idea what I was talking about. So I could look around the room and then try to go into what that meant in terms of our sponsor agreements, our head coaching agreements, all the things that were going to cause us angst and have caused us angst and a lot of money as we've moved through the next, whatever it's been, 30 months plus for me.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the questions right now. Cornelius Holden, I know you know Cornelius Holden.
Yes.
Cornelius Holden wants to know, do you see any more ex-Louisville players being more involved with the program?
I think that's one of the things that Chris is engaged with. We've talked a lot about. I even talked, I sat down with Wade Houston and Junior Bridgman, Darrell Griffith a few weeks ago. We sat down on a Friday and just talked about former players, interest, where they are, things we can do. I sit with Russ Smith when he's in town. He comes to my office. We just do business leadership stuff, what he wants to do when he's done. So part of it is I have former players now who come stop by. Some of them want to do it, but some of them see the work it takes and maybe don't because it is a job. I mean, and I think, guys,
it's not
see
community relations.
Yeah, it's not. And coaching takes a lot of hours these days, and it's very restrictive by the NCAA and what you can and can't do. And some of the what I call coaches on our staff, I call them all coaches, they can't actually coach on the floor. They can't do instruction because of NCAA rules. We're limited to who can. But I like having them around, and Chris is great about players coming and going. The practice center is a regular revolving door. It wasn't when I got there, obviously.
Yeah, it wasn't.
We open that up. We bring them along. When we had our GA position come open and Chris hired CC, Christian Cunningham, that's one thing I said is, as these positions come open and GAs come open, let's get some grassroots guys coming through these positions. And I know there's going to be others that may have been in his coaching career, but as time goes on, this is where he is. Mm-hmm. And this is where our former players should be developed into future coaches, particularly when we're talking about, our black players who have been here, who want to get into coaching. How do we get them into pathways of coaching organizations like I've done with Shadon Brown and Brian Brown on the football, who want to be future head coaches? There are organizations out there where I can call them and talk to them and get them matched up so that they can go to these, coaching conferences and learn how they're going to be a head coach and what hurdles they may have.
Carlisa Gibson with Jefferson County Public Schools wants to know, what type of relationship does the university have with JCPS?
Yeah, well, obviously with Marty Polio and his father Mike Polio's connection to the university, we have one. Even when the COVID hit, and I even reached out to Marty at the time to say, hey, is there anything we can do from athletics on behalf of graduations? Do you want to try to figure out some method for a social distancing graduation in our football stadium? Mm-hmm. We went so far as to Michael Ortman, our Associate AD of Operations, to draw up a plan in case they did want to do it. Mm-hmm. Get them in and out of the stadium with social distancing and so forth and sanitization. But so we have a good relationship with them. We also have a relationship from the community service side with our student athletes, getting in the schools, doing more book reading. As you can appreciate, with Ralph Fitzpatrick on campus, we do more on the West End than we've probably ever done. We're number one in the NCAA in community service, and we're trying to push more of that towards the Jefferson County Public Schools. And then Chris Mack's made a great impression on schools with Coach's Corner. I think he's now done 5 schools where he's put together the Coach's Corner, sort of mini library with the books. That's not going to stop. That thing's really picking up steam now that he's done and kind of released his ties in Cincinnati and now got some regular fundraising going towards our schools here.
Kristen Cody wants to know, what about the in-state schools that were on the, I'm going to assume, on the schedule for football?
Yes.
What do you do with those games now?
Yeah, well, we'll know more about that maybe today, maybe while I'm sitting here, because the SEC is having their meeting today on what they're going to do with their fall sports, particularly football. If they go conference only, Kentucky we won't play them, obviously. We won't get a chance to play them this year. We'll push out. And then we have Murray State and Western still on there. We can take one of the two. Well, we've reached out to both of them to let them know, one, we need to know your schedule availability, and 2, can you meet the medical advisory guidelines? So I think from that it'll help us dictate which path we're going to go. But if the SEC does go conference only, it's going to be one of the two. We're not going to reach outside those two. Hopefully one of the two will be able to accommodate our schedule.
Okay, Coach, let's talk about where we are today in society. Obviously, there are a lot of issues that are affecting us, not only nationally, but within our city. Breonna Taylor, things of that nature. Let's say we are at a football game or a basketball game, and the players are dedicated to the Black Lives Movement and want to protest. What is the university's position if there is a protest amongst your athletes?
Yeah, and we've already had that. Ironically, we'll have more of it, I think, too, as time moves on. But when originally we had the protest getting started, peaceful protest. I know we had some issues around that, but our football players want to do a protest. And we said, we're good with that. You want to march? Yeah, we want to march. And they were talking about coming down and marching at night. And then as they thought about it more, they said, well, maybe we'll march tomorrow in the daylight. And we said, well, what if staff came along with you? Is that okay? And they're like, that'd be great. So we had coaches, administration, put on masks. We masked up, walked the bridge, went across and back. They want to do their peaceful march through downtown. The way I look at it is our student athletes are students first, so they should have student rights. I'm a proponent of that. Had been from day one, because when I got there was a couple things that went on around players wanting to do different things. Actually, one of them was talking about taking a knee back in the day on the women's basketball team, and Coach Wall said, hey, do you know why you want to take a knee? Let's talk about that. Make sure when student athletes want to protest, are they clear on what they're doing, and before they do that. And we always say, just talk to your head coach or your sport administrator, or even if that's uncomfortable, talk to me. But they're clear when they get here every August. I always say, you have your rights. Let's, as a courtesy though, you're going to be under the spotlight more than most students. Just talk to your head coach and make sure we know what you're up to and what's going on, and make sure you have your head clear when you go down there so you don't make a mistake that you may get tagged with down the road. That's worked. I mean, just being open and honest with them has worked, much like that protest. The NCAA made an interesting move today. They approved the student athletes to wear a patch on the uniforms. So they can, if there's a cause, a logo or symbol or whatever it is, as long as the team wears the same logo, whatever it might be, which our teams have been doing that, and we've got T-shirts for them with different logos on it, they can put that on their uniforms. The second thing is, if they want to take out the name, much like the pro leagues, take off the name on the back and put something on the back of their jersey, they can individualize it. But on the patch, it has to be a team one, but on the name, it could be something individualized. I think you're going to see them express themselves. I'm for that. I'm different. I'm unorthodox. I'm not your typical AD in that way, and particularly when it comes to, people's rights.
And that's why people like you. Let me ask you a final question. What do you feel is the biggest challenge that's facing the university, especially the athletic department, for the next few years?
Yeah, I think right now we're in it. We've had some challenges. Obviously, we know that, some setbacks. We've had some issues with some coaches. We've had the NCAA issues. We've had some other issues outside that I feel like we mitigated those incredibly well with the support of the fans. We came through this year. We had I don't know if it's the most profitable year, but one of the most profitable years ever. This past year, coming out around about $4 million of profit is what we'll finish the fiscal year 20. It just ended in June. And we knew we were going to need it because this was going to be a difficult financial year.
Right.
Because we still have some liabilities related to former coaches and other things that went on here. But I felt like we were really in a great spot. The momentum's been terrific with fans, the teams, the coaches, the acceptance of things we've done. And then COVID comes along, and it's a doozy. I mean, it could be, the impact. We don't know that the 15 million is probably not enough. And thinking about where it could be, my worry is it sets us back, years, not a year.
Right.
Because the university is not positioned to really pick us up, if you will, on the athletic side, and we don't have the reserves in place that maybe some schools do because of what we've gone through as well. So if it really heightens and gets a lot worse, it's going to be a challenge. We're going to need our fan support more than ever, so that we can maintain, I'll say, the franchise that we have in place right now with great staff, great coaches, and frankly, great teams. As we were performing at the highest level we have in the history of our athletic program. We were 8th in the Learfield Cup standings. We've never finished inside the top 30.
Mm-hmm. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming. Vince, you are great. Let me just tell you this. I've been wanting to have you on the show. I'm proud of what you're doing for this university. It makes me comfortable letting people know I went to the University of Louisville and that you're leading this athletic department, and I have nothing but great respect for you. I want to thank you for being a part of the program today. Join us once again when we come back next week for A Matter of Perspective, when we bring you another interesting guest. Thank you very much.